Hello again. We're on John Wesley Bready chapter Slave Trading and Bubble Finance, page 49 of This Freedom Whence. And yes, this subhead is South Sea Company and Lesser Bubbles. On the surface it might seem that the slave trade had no relation to that mad financial hoax historically remembered as the South Sea Bubble. Yet both were children of the same zeitgeist, that is, spirit of the age. For the cupidity of their elder brother, the slave trader, influenced perniciously the wild blood of the younger brother, the stock-jobbing gambler. In 1711, in an atmosphere thick with mystery and intrigue, there had been established by Robert Harley, as Chancellor of the Exchequer, a chartered trading corporation, half commercial, half political, known as the South Sea Company. In return for certain chimerical commercial concessions in the South American slave trading and slave labor areas, this concern was to relieve the government of some £10 million of specified public debts, chiefly naval, which had been funded for the purpose. The trading concessions of the Treaty of Utrecht, that is 1713, increased interest in the scheme. By 1720, the company's stock was selling at a substantial premium, so influenced by the temporary magic of that swashbuckling Scottish adventurer John Law, who through the high finance of his Mississippi Company was now deluding the sovereign and robbing the people of France. The English ministry entered into a shady agreement with the South Sea Company for vast extension of its joint stock business. Nor was the project difficult to foist upon the public. 7 years of comparative monopoly in the South Sea slave trade had already brought the country huge accessions of guilty gain. Wildly exaggerated stories, too, of the fabulous wealth brought to England in Elizabeth's reign by the expeditions of Drake and Hawkins were noised everywhere and avidly consumed. A spirit of reckless gambling filled the air. Meanwhile, also, the black arts of Law's paper finance had caused the stock of France's Mississippi Company to rise to 1,200%. And why should British finance be less modern than that of France? Nevertheless, before the scheme could be hatched, fictitious stock of £570,000 had to be placed in itching palms. The recipients of these gratuities included the Earl of Sunderland, Mr. Secretary Craggs, Mr. Eerily, that is the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the King's German mistresses, and certain influential members of Parliament. In February 1720, a grandiose plan, too complicated to be generally understood, was brought forward in Parliament. By its provisions, the South Sea Company was to be reorganized and its privileges immensely enhanced, while in return for extended scope, it was not only to free the government of tens of millions of funded national debt, but also to pay it the equivalent of £7.5 million by way of appreciation of the monopoly bargain conferred upon it. Despite the warnings of Walpole, whose saving grace was his business sense, this wild bill passed unimpeded through Parliament, and on April the 7th received the royal assent. So forthwith was begun the gentle art of bubbling the nation, and as bubbles are short-lived, the company's business required haste. Romantic tales stealthily circulated caused the South Sea stock immediately to rise, but scarcely fast enough to suit the company's ends. Hence Sir John Blunt, a director, let loose a rumor to the effect that Gibraltar and Port Mahon were to be exchanged for rich gold mines in Peru, and that British trade in the South Seas was to be protected and enlarged. The desired effect was produced. At once the directors opened to the public a subscription for £2 million at £300 for the £100. It was heavily oversubscribed and immediately began to sell at a premium. The accumulating snowball had now started rolling, and deep clouds of delusion were long to obscure the burning light of truth, which alone could melt it away. On April 30th, the company offered a second subscription for £1 million at £400. It, too, was immediately snapped up, and a multitude of subscribers representing all classes became boosters of the wondrous company which could turn stones to gold. A mania had now possessed the nation. Thousands sold property or pawned heirlooms to gamble in the company's stock. Change Alley, literally blocked with desks and clerks, became a roaring hell porch of insane and dishonest speculators. A poem of the age says, while some build castles in the air, directors build them in the seas. Subscribers plainly see them there, for fools will see as smart knaves please. That's the end of our little poem. Bready goes on, by the end of May, £100 stock stood at £890, and the company, by a premature dividend, by circulating the news that the next half-yearly dividend would be 30%, and that for many years it could not be less than 50% per annum, floated third and fourth issues at £1,000 for 100 shares, £100 shares. Nevertheless, even the fourth issue was oversubscribed. And when, in midsummer, prices in Change Alley reached their peak, South Sea stock sold at £1,060. Meanwhile, the gambling frenzy was not confining itself to South Sea stock, and Exchange Alley had many a competing hell porch. The political state of Great Britain gives a list of 104 mushroom companies which, basking in the glory of the Great Bubble, were, during July, offering their alluring stocks to the gullible public. The nature of some of these companies is amusing and revealing. Among them are concerns for a wheel of perpetual motion, the assurance of seamen's wages, ensuring and increasing children's fortunes, the extraction of silver from lead, the importation of great jackasses from Spain, and trading in human hair. A clergyman proposed a company to discover the land of Ophir and monopolize its gold and silver. One projector, claiming to have control of a marvelous invention, later to be disclosed, offered £100 shares for 2 guineas. In a single day his bag was full of gold. By nightfall he was on the continent, never to be heard of again. His marvelous invention had worked. More on the bubble financing of the middle of the 18th century next time.